Hey again, we got another fascinating lecture on waves. This time it's chapter 15. It's on the properties of light. The first section will just be on the nature of light, how it works, some things that we need to know about light. So first thing, light obviously moves at the speed of light, which I know probably comes as no surprise to any of you. But the symbol for the speed of light is a c. The value of it is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second, which is just kind of a abstract number, I think, sometimes for people. But it moves really fast in miles per second. It's 186,000 miles per second. And like it says there, that's enough to travel around the Earth 7 times in 1 second. So the speed of light is extraordinarily fast. It's almost too difficult to comprehend how fast that truly is going to be moving. But anyway, the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. Sometimes we refer to things as a light minute, the distance light travels in a minute. And for the sun to the earth, that's about 8 light minutes. Okay? So it takes light to get from the sun to the earth. It takes 8 minutes to get there. So obviously it's a long way, but for light it moves really, really fast. However, when you compare light to the size of the universe, it says if the solar system was shrunk so that the sun was at one end zone and Pluto is at the other end zone, Earth would only be a little past the 2-yard line. So it's kind of almost difficult to comprehend what that distance is going to be, truly how large things are in the universe. That's why in the universe, we're generally looking at things in terms of light years. So as we start talking about how far light travels in a year, that's called a light year. It says the nearest galaxy to ours is 2.2 million light years away. So it's an extraordinary long time how far things actually are apart in the universe. So some things about light that is kind of unique. Light is a wave because it does travel. It has wave-like properties, but it also has particle-like properties, which is kind of a strange things to think about. But light does behave as both a wave and as a particle. Usually when we're dealing with light, we treat it as a wave because that's how we usually perceive it and how we actually usually use it. However, when light acts as a particle, it's going to be something called a photon, which are basically just packeted, quantized light energy. So when you have these little packets of light energy coming to you from the sun or from a light bulb or whatever the case is, those little light packets are called photons. And it's just the little individual chunks of light that are going to be there. They have these little packets of energy that are going to occur, and that's what actually arrives at us. So understand that light can be both a particle and a wave depending on how you want to treat it. Now, as far as properties of light, some of the ranges of these packets or photons of light occur in something called the electromagnetic spectrum. So the electromagnetic spectrum is just when we treat light as a wave and how we perceive the different types of light that are going to be there. Our speed equation still works, so the speed is still the frequency times the wavelength, although when you're dealing with the speed of light, instead of dealing with a v, you just deal with the letter c because that is what the speed of light is. So the speed of light is going to be frequency times the wavelength. For light, generally the frequency is going to be really, 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 really big, and the wavelength is going to be really, 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 really small. And again, as the frequency would get bigger, the wavelength would get smaller, because if you have a really big wavelength, you have to have a really small frequency. So these, I don't know if you don't generally need to memorize them, but to give you some idea of different things that are types of energy, not just light, but electromagnetic. There's radio waves and microwaves and infrared waves. If you can see your scale there, we're going like 10 to the 6th power to about 10 to the 14th. So we're dealing with a pretty wide range of frequencies. Dealing with about 8 powers of 10 there, so it is a pretty wide range for these ones. Radio waves, it's the stuff that broadcasts radio and TV waves. Microwave can be cooking stuff and carrying phone calls. And infrared, you can use it in heat lamps and things like that. It's often used in TV remote controls and stuff like that too. So those are the lower energy waves. Then we have our visible light in this spectrum right here. So it's going from about 400 nanometers up to 700 nanometers, which in meters would be 4 times 10 to the negative 7th up to 7 times 10 to the negative 7th meters. So what we can see is just a very, very, very small range in here. Along with the radio waves, things like that. You got your microwaves, and you have your infrared waves. Oops, sorry. The other ones, the higher energy ones, would be things like gamma rays and X-rays and ultraviolet energy. These would be the ones that are generally dangerous to us. Because if you think about things like ultraviolet, that's the energy from the sun that can burn your skin. X-rays can ionize your cells and cause cell damage, and the same for gamma rays. So these ones up here, the low energy ones, the ones we don't worry about too much. The visible, obviously the stuff we can see. These ones are the high energy ones, the ones that are a little more dangerous to us. As far as colors go, we have some primary colors, red, blue, and green. So when you add them together, you can see right here in the middle, you end up getting white. So red and blue gives you magenta, and blue and green gives you cyan, and green and red gives you yellow. So keep in mind, these are the primary additive colors dealing with light. It's not dealing with pigments. The subtractive colors, if you take yellow and cyan, you get green and things like that. So these are what we would think about as the pigment colors. So if we put all the pigments together, you get black. If we put all the different pigments together, you can end up getting white. So that's the difference between those. So when you deal with colors, as far as light goes, it's a different set of color rules than when you deal with the pigments. Back to those old high energy waves, are ultraviolet energy. That's the stuff that causes sunburn. The X-rays, it's definitely it's important for medical diagnostic stuff, but it is dangerous to our body. And gamma rays is definitely also dangerous to us, but they are pretty important for sterilizing things like food. It's also good for sterilizing bandages and other medical supplies that need to be sterilized also. In chapter 16, we talk a little bit about how light behaves with mirrors. So we know that light can reflect. We know that mirrors can reflect, and that's one of the things that we need to understand, that different types of mirrors will reflect differently. And that's important ideas there. Just two different terms, not ones that are super important, but there are different types of reflections. There's specular reflections and there's diffuse reflections. So mirrors are really good at giving a specular reflection where it gives a nice sharp image. Where a diffuse reflection, something where you have reflections coming off of a water or a shiny table or the floor or something like that, don't give near as sharp of an image. So there are different things that can reflect, and different objects obviously will reflect differently. So different types of mirrors. There's plane mirrors and there's curved mirrors, but a plane mirror is just like it sounds. It's made of a plane, and these are the ones you'd be familiar with that would be in your bathroom or something like that. They reflect. They keep things the same direction, but your right and left is going to be switched. So that's where you say if you're standing in a mirror, everything is the same, proportionally the same height, but your left and right sides are going to be swapped out. For example, if you had this little object right here, the height that you're going to see on the other side of the mirror is going to be exactly the same. So the height over here is the same as the height over here. But what happens is the right and left sides are switched. So the way that we perceive it is we have light that's bouncing off of the object. It hits the mirror and it comes back to our eyes, but then our brain perceives it as being over on this side of the mirror. So mirrors are going to be just basically changing the direction of the light, and our brain is perceiving where that object is going to be at. So that's how flat mirrors work. Curved mirrors, there's concave mirrors and convex mirrors. Concave mirrors are ones that bend in. Convex mirrors are ones that go out. They both have a focal point, and that's the point where light is going to be converging at. But what's kind of unique is that a concave mirror actually flip objects upside down unless it gets really close to it. Where convex mirrors are always going to be upright, but the image is going to be really small. You might have seen some of these in stores. Sometimes they'll use them as security mirrors, so you can see what's around a corner or something like that. It's a way to see what's going on and know what's happening in a place where you maybe can't see it. So with a concave and a convex mirror, this one over here is a concave mirror. So this would be your original object. Light comes in, light bounces off, light goes in, light bounces off, and where it all comes back together is where it is going to make the image. So this person that's standing upright over here is going to be smaller and inverted. Okay? And until you get inside the focal point is where you're actually going to get the object to flip the other way. But for concave mirrors, when you have objects that are pretty darn far away, the object is always going to be flipped upside down and it's going to be smaller. For a convex mirror, where you have the curved edge pointing out, you have light going in and light going away. Light goes in, light reflects right back. Light always reflects perpendicularly off a mirror. So as the light goes in, it goes back. And when you put all those things together, that's where it's going to tell you where that object is. So this was the original size. This is going to be the size of the object. And you can notice that it's going to be upright. Focal point would be right here on this mirror, and would be right here on this mirror, okay, because that's where it would appear that the light is going to be coming from. Okay, so concave mirrors and convex mirrors, they both reflect, but they reflect things differently, and that's one of the things that you need to realize as you look at a mirror, is they're going to have different reflections. And the last thing we have to talk about here would be our refraction. So refraction is how light moves through different objects. So the speed of light changes as it goes through different objects. So here you have this poor person sitting in the sitting in a pool with the light moving in different directions, and it changes speed. It actually changes the way that the light's going to be moving. That's going to be called refraction. So you've probably seen that before if you've ever looked into a fountain or something and tried to reach in and grab something under the water. It's not where you expect it to be. So one of the things that will do a lot of refracting is a lens. If you wear glasses or contact lenses, refraction is something that's pretty important to you. So there's two types of lenses. There can be a converging, it says a prism, it could be a lens too, or a diverging lens. But as the light is coming in, it's all going to be bending in this direction right here. So as it comes down, it's going to be focusing its light as it's going to be going through there. The same is true on a diverging one. As it goes, it sends this one out, but if we bring it all the way back, that's where we imagine the light is going to be at. So in a converging prism, or a converging lens, it's going to bring the light all to a point on the other side. In a diverging lens, it's going to bring the light to appear to all come back to here. So depending on what you need your lens to do will depend on what type of a lens you're going to be utilizing. So magnifying glasses, well, they're using convex lenses. You may have seen something like that before, where you took a magnifying glass and allowed you see that the object is actually upside down. You have to flip it. Well, that's because the magnifying glass is actually using a convex lens. If you've used a magnifying glass to maybe burn some paper or something, where you use the sun and you focus the sun on a piece of paper, that's exactly what you're going to be using there, because the light is all going to be coming back together and meeting at a point where it can get really, really hot. Microscopes, they use multiple lenses to get the objects to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Cameras, obviously, they're going to use lenses too, that focuses it in order to get a nice crisp image of something that's going to be far away. So different objects, obviously, are going to use some different types of lenses there to do whatever it is that needs to be done. So different types of lenses need to be utilized to make an object do what it's intended to do. Your eye is a lens. So it brings light in. Obviously, you can see that you got a lens right here that's going to be curved. So as the light comes in, it moves to the back, focuses that light to the optic nerve, and that's one of the things that our eye is a pretty darn good lens too. Our last topic here, now we're into chapter 18, which is interference and diffraction. And diffraction is just the spreading out of light. It's one of those things that's pretty difficult to understand. But as you look through light, it actually spreads out the light that's going to be there. So when you have a really, really small opening, you can see the light is actually going to be coming through and diffracting. Okay, so you need a very small gap in order for that to happen. This is only a wave phenomena, so waves will do this. Water will do this as it would go through an opening. The wave would actually spread out. And when you have that light that's going to be interacting, it can actually undergo constructive and destructive interference. So here we have light that's going to be coming through. You can see it's diffracting and it's going to be spreading out, and then these points where the waves overlap, you can actually get brighter spots and you can get darker spots. So what's kind of interesting is light can actually cancel itself out in order to make what's called a diffraction pattern. And the last thing would be iridescence. You've probably seen bugs before and shells like this that are actually iridescent. That's caused by a whole bunch of little objects that are going to be going through there. And while they do that, they're actually going to be changing their diffraction pattern to overlap and give those patterns that you're going to be seeing. So it's kind of a unique way of looking at things there. So again, if you have any questions on any of this, please let me know. We will talk to you later. Bye.